and make machinery of government work to deliver the benefits of progress to Ghanaians. These are a bit broad, particularly the fourth one, work to deliver the benefits of the progress to Ghanaians. But Ray, you are talking about managing the economy competently, which can also be called a bit broad. Restoring macroeconomic stability, that has been happening. We have seen that some of the indicators that are looked at, like inflation, like GDP growth, they are doing well. But shifting the focus of economic management from taxation to production, which the heart of which is the One District, One Factory program, Raymond, it looks like there are still a lot more answers, more questions to be answered in that area.
Yes, and sometimes some of these conversations, what the president stated is what everybody studies in the lower levels of education, that in order to make sure you are not dependent on imports, you need to export more, you need to grow your economy. It's the basis for which Nkrumah sought to put together almost a 300 and over factories, from the sugar factories through to the meat factories, through to the other ones that we sought to do along the line. It's the same basis for which Alan Chemante, then under PSI, sought to explore other factories that could help us develop as a state, reduce the areas that we are doing massive imports and all the things that are required in there. It's the same way that virtually every government have sought to answer that same question, that are we better off building our own factories, getting our own workers in these factories, producing the things we eat, and making sure that we are dependent on our system so that we don't have to rely extensively on imports. Because if you import and you don't have the currency to support the import, you surely have a problem with a huge vacuum between how much currency of dollars you have in here and how much you're supposed to be getting. There will be panic along the line. When the panic comes in, it affects other factors. The people on the black market will start driving the prices along the lines that they are supposed to be doing so. But this is not new. This is not fresh. Indeed, this is what this government sought to reverse. So, rather than we all complaining or the president reiterating some of the solutions, we would have been willing and happy to hear him say that we have fixed the tide of the city because we have actually increased greatly our exports. We have reduced tremendously our imports. We are not doing consumption importation. We are actually doing more productive importation in ways that we need to make sure we improve this economy. We have decided as a state that we are no longer importing millions of dollars of meat offals, and I'm sure you know meat offals, right? Yes, so that people just consume that. We are not doing huge poultry importation. We are not importing huge amounts of rice in a way that is detrimental to the economy of this country. That is what we want to see, a reversal in those trends. So to the extent that the president is still telling us the same problems we have known, the same problems we have reiterated, and I'm so convinced that virtually everybody from Abosokai through to Makola, the people who do the importations on a daily basis, they understand and they know the problem. They know also that there are cheap imports from China, very cheap ones, which includes... And again, why are we not even going the Nigerian way? Why are we, since China is one of our groupings that we import a lot from, why are we not asking China like Nigeria to make sure we can import in their currency and not use the dollar as a mid currency to do that? Why is that impossible for us to take that particular route? Because if you identify the main countries that you do importation with, you can. And Nigeria has shown the way. Neighboring Nigeria has shown the way in the end. In Nigeria today, importation in China can be done in the two currencies directly. So you don't bring in the dollar in this case. So there's this fatigue of having to repeat the same thing, and especially when the policy maker and the executioner in this case, when the executive head is the one telling us more about the problems, because we knew the problems. He reiterated it prior to campaign, during campaign. You've outlined that clearly. We wanted to see the tremendous steps that within the period you're talking about, more than 2 years, transforms the economy in the path that will see some of these things not being repeated to us. Okay. Because we all know they are not new. Okay. And we've heard people complain about that before. What is lacking is the action to reverse the trend. And that's where we should be asking the leadership of the country that, yes, show us evidence of reversing this trend. not just the isolated interventions, that sick amount of other things to say, oh, well, let's try and put out some factories. You were telling me about the boat and nut factory, right?
Yes, there's a boat and nuts factory in the Ashanti region.
Yes.
There are a number of factories that we've been told by government
Yes.
are at various stages of completion. And let me just
Again,
put this out
what
there.
I want to state
Yes.
is that if you ask the AGI, if you have checked that trade data, it is pretty clear that the areas that we need intervention, the areas that will be lacking a lot when it comes to the things we have to import, rarely are in the areas that we have complained about. Almost 600 million rice, we say we've reduced it quite a little bit. Also, the meat offers that we complained about poultry feed itself before the poultry separately. And we have not been able to clear some of these things. So if you are not able to do that, it will take you a very long way. In any case, if you want to tackle this matter, take head on the major issues that require implantation. That is the places that
importation.
Yeah, that require importation, and make sure that all your steps are geared towards fixing those ones before you look at the rather small contributory ones. If you take from the bottom the things that really makes no huge impact on the economy, especially when it comes to importation, it will seem that you want to use more than a decade or so to fix the problem.
For me, Raymond, this morning, I'm finding some very, very interesting reading in the NPP's manifesto in 2016, and I'm doing this because, you see, when we vote, we vote because we choose a solution.
Yeah, and we expect change.
And we expect a change, and so no matter what happened in a ballot booth, as soon as you win an election, you come with a solution. And it looks like on paper, some of the solutions that were proffered in December 2016 were things that could have worked. I mean, look, we have here what the NPP will do. I'm reading from page 10, page 9 or page 10 of the manifesto. Pursuing aggressive industrialization and value addition to agricultural produce. That's the first point. Providing tax and related incentives for manufacturing businesses in sectors such as agro-processing, light industries, pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals, garments, and textiles, among others. Providing a reliable, cost-effective mix of energy supply for businesses. Providing necessary incentives for private sector participation in health service delivery. Pursuing policies that will reduce interest rates. Implementing policies that will reduce the cost of doing businesses. Stabilizing the currency. Point G. Providing incentives to the hospitality and creative industries that will enable them create jobs. Investing in skills training and apprenticeships. Promoting exports, especially of value-added agricultural produce and light manufacturing. Now, Raymond, where are we on this will be the question. Of course, let me just say that this was not our intention to come and read out the manifesto and have a conversation around it. We are still working on getting the Ministry of Business Development and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, because we feel that the thrust of the president's conversation was that we need to have more local interests in our economy. The banking sector, for instance, is 80% foreign dominated. We can go from sector to sector to sector to sector and find out that.
And predominantly those who were shut down or collapsed were predominantly local ones too.
Yes. And
the
find out that,
sense.
Yes. They find out that the general economy, even retail, shops that do retail on a large scale are largely foreign dominated. So you find that the money that is made here, and the economists will explain to you that there's a difference between I'm exporting more than I'm importing, and I am making more money locally than money that I'm sending out. Because here's the thing, if you have a foreign-dominated economy, Raymond, what that means is that when a number of these companies make their profits, and this is not in any bid to make a xenophobic or a nationalistic comment, but the analysis is as it is. And if you look at the work that Professor Esibe has done, for instance, you will find it clearly written there that when these companies make money, they have to change the cedis to dollars and export and send the dollars out of the country. That means that I need more dollars. If I don't have enough dollars, the price of the dollar will go up. The exchange rate, basically, the economists will tell you, is a matter of demand and supply. If the dollars are a lot in the system, the cost of the dollar will not be that much. It's like buying a pair of shoes. If there are a lot of pairs of shoes in the system of the same kind, that means that the person has choice. That means that the price will go down. Okay? Now, here's the case where we are sending a lot of money out of the system. through some of these foreign companies. So what have we done since 2017 to try and encourage local businesses, Malik, so that these local businesses can compete with their foreign counterparts and the money we spend stays here?
Yeah, we have seen the Business Development Minister, Dr. Ibrahim Awal.
Malik, give me a second. Dr. Nimoy Thompson, an economist and former executive director of the NDPC, has joined us on the line. Good morning, Dr. Thompson. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
I am blessed. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks.
Great. So in the first place, the president speaks and he mentions the current accounts deficits and our local consumption patterns as one of the main reasons why we have the exchange rate situation we have. Do you agree?
Well, it depends on what is meant by local consumption patterns. I suppose he's referring to imports. The imports are only one part of the equation. And even then, when you discuss imports, you need to ask yourself what is driving the import? What is financing that at a time when the economy is not growing as much as it should? And it's driven largely by government spending, excessive government spending, the continued practice of putting people on government payroll when we shouldn't do that. Driving that because every month, for example, last year, the government pumped in an average of, let's say, 918 million Ghana cedis per month, the former salaries. This year, it's projected to pump in just over 1.2 billion Ghana cedis per month. And we don't have the productive capacity to meet the demand that these money then lead to. So what happens? We import everything. So it's important in the midst of this crisis. Of course, this is an age-old problem. It's nothing peculiar to this government in terms of overspending, going beyond the budget. It dates back to Kwame Nkrumah's time, which is why the IMF first came to Ghana in 1965. But it's become more pronounced in the past 2 years. And so if we are going to deal with the problem, the first area to look at is where you have immediate control, and that's government spending. This business about Eurobonds and traveling all over the world, you may or may not get what you want, but at least you have control over what you spend and how you drive demand for imports. You add to that the spending on goods and services and others. So that's one area that the government really, truly, for immediate effect, needs to send maybe a memo to every minister, cut down on non-essential services. Certainly, wasteful spending must be brought under control. There's so much wasteful spending taking place in government. I was in Tokyo not long ago. I never saw any V8 or Land Cruisers there. We have more V8 and Land Cruisers in Accra than you have in Tokyo. And not just that. The typical minister goes to launch a meeting. The V8 is on. The driver is in there an hour, 2 hours with the engine running. Don't forget that we import oil. So every little expenditure is critical. As they say on some of the radio stations, every single cedi that we spend needlessly must be accounted for. So that's from the consumption aspect in terms of restraining demand. But then we need to, as the president said, we need to begin to put in place measures for the structural transformation of the economy. And that is a cumulative process. You cannot say that and at the same time have a situation where a government comes in and the very first thing they do is to abolish or ignore or undermine everything else that was done by the previous government and then try to start all over again, make the mistakes that other governments have already made. A typical example is what happened with SADA, for example. Yes, in the first 2 years of SADA, it was riddled with corruption and scandals and all that. But the last 2 years, they did a fantastic job of transforming and industrializing the northern part of the country, including northern BA and northern Volta. The government comes in and throws everything away. That program, and by the way, I encourage you and your listeners to also Google SADA District Ghana link and then download the documents and read the amount of work that went into the structural and socioeconomic transformation of this part of the country that was just simply thrown out.
Okay.
And then replaced with something else that has its own scandals. And I'm referring to the Ministry for Special Initiatives. Look at the scandals they're all involved in. And now we're told they build 100,000 community toilets and all that. Is that our sense of transformation? Destroy what you inherit and then tell us that you build 100,000 toilets? So we need to be also truthful as we make public pronouncements about structural transformation. It doesn't happen just by word of mouth. It's how you act it out.
I have a question on your first point about government's consumption. Is it a matter of overspending or where government is spending that money? Because if you look at other economies, you find that a lot of the local companies benefit from government spending. So in the US, exactly, that's what happens. So should we not rather be looking at building local giants rather than cutting spending totally?
A terrific point. When you are not producing, as I said, and you keep overspending, and not just spending, but also overspending, and spending in recurrent expenditures, not even capital expenditure. There's a whole issue about the capital spend. After the program, I'll send you some nice graphs that lay out the visuals of what I'm telling you. But in this case, we are not just spending on recurrent expenditures, but we are overspending. So, for instance, we brought it down from just over 1.2 billion, overspending, overshooting the budget in 2012. It was brought down to 269 million in 2015. And then election year 2016, it picks up to 387. Now, traditionally, election year wage bills go up. But then right after that, there's an exercise on effort to reduce it, and it reduces. In this particular case, it never happened in 2017 and 2018. Rather, it's been going up. And again, financing current consumption, which we meet through import. On the other hand, we have the situation of capital expenditures fully declining. They fall short of what we even put in the budget. In the budget, we say we'll spend this and that. At the end of it all, it falls low. Now, that's one aspect of it. So the quality of spending, the composition of public spending is equally important. If you're not investing in infrastructure, you're not growing your economy. All you're doing is telling people go out there and spend. And most of these people, by the way, who get on government payroll through dubious means are not adding anything. If anything, it's negative productivity. Look at the man who was told used to sell phones. And there's nothing wrong with selling phones. It's decent work, it's honest labor, but somehow ends up in a very sensitive position in government. During his testimony, he required at least twice as much time. That's double negative productivity right there. So that's one aspect of it. The other side is simply the institutional arrangements. I've been complaining. Listen, our international trade taxes, for instance, are a killer. 17% of total tax revenue, as opposed to an average for lower middle income countries of 10%. And even that, for the long-term development plan, we said that is too high. We need to reduce that because it's a cycle. It's a loop. Because a lot of the fees and whatnot are priced in dollars, every time there's a depreciation of the cedi, it feeds into the inflation loop. And so we are constantly caught in that, which is then aggravated by the government's own spending pattern. So we require major reforms and discipline on the part of the government. And that's for the immediate term, not even the short term, the immediate term. What they're doing out there is for the short term. And then we begin to talk about the medium. The last time I proposed a national economic forum for the simple reason that some of the decisions that the government will have to take, such as cutting back on expenditures, may be unpopular to its base, but it will be necessary for Ghanaians. And so you need a forum where you put everything out there that, folks, this is the situation. We can continue to implement our manifesto promises heedlessly and therefore run the economy into a ditch, or we scale back as Ghanaians and do the right thing for the benefit of all. This idea that vote for me, I'll give you employment, and then you put people on the payroll, as opposed to creating employment opportunities in the private sector, needs to be addressed. In the long-term plan, lastly, in the long-term plan, we propose, in addition to the 5 strategic goals for transformation, we propose 25 strategic growth areas, which these people then dismissed. In fact, there was a particular minister who was averse to the word strategic. I personally aligned the MPP's manifesto with the strategic plan. They said, no, we are not interested. If they want our shareholders.
Now, Doc, if I want to tie the first points you made with the earlier points you were making about investing in specific areas which you focus on infrastructure, our plan or our model for funding development in the country may stand against that, because we often borrow to develop as a country. We are always running a budget deficit. And when we borrow to develop, these monies that we borrow often comes with itinerant people who will send the money back. So we pay contractors from outside of the country to build infrastructure, they send the money back. And this morning, we are talking about dollars leaving the system. Yes. So is our lack of independence not also contributing to this?
Not that. It depends on how you go around it. Let me tell you, in addition to the 40-year plan, there's also a 30-year infrastructure plan, and then a 20-year spatial development framework, which is meant for the fiscal transformation of where we live, not just inner cities and zongos, but also slums and peri-urban. So we have these things. And for the 30-year plan, we actually require certain principles, including the building of our institutional capacity for the development of our own infrastructure. So you will not have a situation where you have a list of things you want China to build and they come in here and build and walk away. No, it's going to be a properly structured program where they come in, we agree on how many Ghanaian companies are going to participate in there, the number of engineers, the number of architects, surveyors, so that gradually we also build our capacity, not just to build our own infrastructure, but also to be able to build infrastructure elsewhere. There must be a time where you may be walking in Beijing and you see Amponsa Construction Company. It must be that. But we have such an inferiority complex that we think we'll just sit here and then others will come and do us some good. I just read on the net that the wife of the vice president has secured some assistance from India to come and do some pediatric this and this so forth. And it shows the lack of strategic thinking on our part, because no one, it seems to know exactly India's own strategic ambitions towards Ghana and, for that matter, Africa, and for that matter, even China's strategic ambition. Because if they did, they would realize that India's, the trade policies, protectionist trade policies, actually have contributed to the destruction of the cashew industry in Brong-Ahafo region.
Because very interesting points there, Dr. Thompson. Dr. Thompson, I want you to hold on just a moment for me. I'm inviting Professor Eric Osei-Sibe into the conversation. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Great. So, Prof, we began and we've gotten to a point with Doc, and I just want you to join in on us on this with this question. Do you agree that the current Cedi depreciation that we have is as a result of government's spending pattern and the nature in which we engage international partners when we need money to develop?
Well, I wouldn't lay the blame on that for. We can't single out government expenditure for this. In any case, you can clearly see that government has been able to reduce fiscal deficits significantly. So it may not necessarily be, but that's it. For a discussion on the exchange rate, we must always put it in a proper perspective. The exchange rate determination often comes with two key determinants. We have the long-run behavior of the exchange rates. Within the long run, how the exchange rate behaves. And then we have the short-run determination of the exchange rate. And so when you're putting or making this discussion, you really have to make that distinction. For the long-run behavior of the exchange rate, we all know the issues. The issues, the fact that we have very weak productive structures, and which makes our current account put it in a deficit because we seem to import more than we export on the surface. But even that one, when you break it down, you realize that the merchandise exports, we seem to be doing well in terms of value of export, because we have been recording a trade surplus over the last 2-3 years. But when you bring in the income transfers, you realize that the current account often shows a deficit, and that is what the president was talking about. So that is an issue. The other issue with respect to our exchange rate is often the short-run movement of the currency. The short-run movement sometimes has nothing to do really with the fundamentals, because if the fundamentals were anything to go by, then I think that we shouldn't be seeing the things that we are seeing, because the market fundamentals appear quite strong. We are seeing inflation coming down. We are seeing interest rates trending downwards. We are seeing fiscal deficit narrowing significantly. We are seeing trade surplus. So, really, it's not. We cannot. Although it's a problem, the structures remain weak. But for me, if you are really explaining what is happening now, it has more to do with the short-run movement of the currency. And this is how I see it. One of it is the repatriation of profits by our multinationals. You know, we have big corporations, big multinational companies that generate or that do not export their services. They are largely non-tradable or engage in non-tradable services. They generate revenues in Ghana cedis, and yet their shareholders and their costs of perhaps production are denominated in the dollar because their shareholders are not in their country, and they often import critical intermediate products from outside. So in that case, at the beginning of every year, you see these corporations actually demanding high dollar and really taking them out of the country. So that begins to put enormous pressure on the currency. And beyond that, we also have a situation where external debt situation, if you look at our debt structure, about 60% of it is held by outsiders. It's held by non-resident investors. What that means is that it often makes your currency very sensitive to global shocks, external shocks. So if there's any shock that occasion outside, you see the impact immediately faring on your currency. So, for example, we have large amount of domestic bonds being held by non-residents.
Okay.
Therefore, if, for example, the U.S. Fed fund rates, the U.S. monetary policy, compared to what we have here, goes up, it makes the assets, the returns, or the yield on U.S. bonds much more attractive than what we have here. And so if that happens, you are likely to see some kind of speculative attacks. You see some kind of withdrawals, sudden withdrawals, money leaving these shores because the holders of this bond begin to offload and begin to demand the U.S. denominated bond. And that will immediately have impact. In many cases, the spot exchange rate is not really determined by the long-run behavior of the exchange rate, but the short run, the amount of money that in a span of a moment leave your economy would always determine the spot exchange rate. So that has to be managed. If we don't manage this situation well, the central bank in particular become much more forward-looking and preemptive in its approach to managing some of these things. We will always be having these issues, even if you have trade surplus, which is expected to bring in more earnings than you are actually taking out in terms of your export. Because of these speculative attacks and the vulnerability of our economy to external forces, you always see these blips coming in and out. So we really need a targeted approach to arrest some of these issues. Otherwise, we may be correcting the fundamentals, but if we don't have a targeted monetary policy approach to manage the short-run movement of this currency, often be seeing this. Because it's seasonal. If you look at the trends over the about 6-7 years, you realize that the cedi often depreciates sharply around January, February, March. Why is it always the case? It's because of the way the economy is structured, because we have so many multinationals, we have so many other companies that whose factors of production are held not by Ghanaians but by outsiders, and these people have to pay their shares. They have to repatriate their profits to the holders of factors of production.
Right.
And then you always see this happening. So in a way, we need to, how do we talk to these people, these corporations, to at least retain some of their profits within the country when they make it, particularly where they don't generate dollar revenue, denominated revenues.
Okay.
It's very important that we look at these issues.
Great. So, Prof, if I'm to understand what you are putting forward, You are saying that there's too much foreign interest in our local economy.
Precisely, yeah.
Great. So if we want to grow local interest, since government has been known to be the biggest spender over the years, for instance, government is the largest employer. For instance, if you're a contractor and you work for government, that means that you're probably going to be dealing with the biggest projects. Does it then not make sense that governments will channel its expenditure to local businesses?
Well, I mean, we are in a free enterprise economy. And so government, of course, cannot lead in the production process. As we always say, government will always act as a facilitator, creating the enabling environment for the private sector to flourish. And so the role of government really is to how to create a competitive infrastructure, how to make sure that the regulations that are available, support business sector to thrive, and how to make sure that the social policies are also accessible and they are supporting the private sector to grow. For me, that is a critical role of government. Government expenditure must be seen as targeting those areas, the road network, the energy sector, reliable energy, and all of that. Now, when government has provided this, it's left to the private sector to respond. In responding, the private sector have to make sure that whatever businesses that they are doing will benefit the economy. So, given the structure of our economy, where we seem to import more than we export, and where we seem to have preference for external products than the domestic product, I think that if the private sector begin to be more forward-looking and export-led, their approach to their businesses, some of these things will be reversed.
But you see, Prof,
yes.
The point you make is a great point, but in the face of what other countries have done, at least, you realize that the United States is being very protectionist about its steel industry. Ghana has signed a deal with Sino-Hydro, which is a private Chinese company. But this private Chinese company was led by its government, so that we get money based on our agreement with Sino-Hydro. So you realize here that governments all over the world seem to have a certain thinking that if I can adopt this company or these companies and grow them and make them greater, maybe we can have that point that Dr. Nimoy Thompson talked about, where we can have an Amponsa construction in China.
Yeah, I mean, why not? We can have that. Choosing ways and providing the needed support. But I think that what our model is also quite acceptable in the literature. I mean, government tried to facilitate and try to unleash the power of the private sector to lead in the production process, because we have seen it before. We have seen it in the after when the Kwame Nkrumah, the 7-year development plan and the plan seeking to lead all production processes, setting up state-owned enterprises here and there, state banks, and all of that. What at the end of the day, many of these companies collapsed because the government often, the literature often suggests that government is inefficient in running businesses.
Okay, Prof, I want to step in here. Pardon me. I want to step in here because there's a point of clarification on the question I asked. I didn't propose the Nkrumah model where the state itself owns and runs these institutions. I proposed, for instance, in Brazil, Petrobras is a state-owned oil company, but it's run as a private company. Okay, so of course Petrobras had its problems and what have you, but for a long time, until the corruption scandals, we knew Petrobras to be a great example. In Japan, the auto industry is private. But a lot of state incentives, exactly. So what I'm saying is that don't we have to be deliberate about supporting the private sector, deliberate about the sector and the companies, so that we can retain currency?
We can do that. Countries like South Korea have a deliberate industrialization policy to support certain key strategic industries. I think we can do that, and I also want to see, we are beginning to see that. For me, if you look at what this government came up with the one district, one factory, and the support that is given to some key private sector, and then the stimulus packages and all of that. I think it's a step in the right direction to begin to support businesses to grow to be giant. I think what we have to do really is to have these deliberate policies that actually support businesses to grow and to be able to penetrate into the global value chain.
Okay.
I think we are looking at more of horizontal growth than vertical growth. What does that mean? We are not supporting, we are not targeting enterprises that have competitive advantage to grow to become giants and to be able to penetrate into the global value chain to make a difference. But we seem to be supporting small businesses more and more coming up every now and then, and many of them, get choked up at a point, and they leave the market or they are not able to compete. So I think more can be done in terms of being deliberate in supporting certain businesses. But that, for me, is one of the solutions to the problems that we have. The problem is the private sector, and then creating the enabling environment for private sector themselves to lead the way. If you're talking about innovation and inventions and being competitive and productive, it's really not about government. It's about the private sector who takes advantage of the enabling environment that the government has created, and to target not only the domestic market but the foreign market. And if there's enough government support, I believe that we'll be able to solidify the base, the productive base, and then the fundamentals, so that these issues, which has become a recurrent, seasonal, every now and then we talk about it at the beginning of the year, it comes. It's all due to some of these structural issues and also the short-run management of the currency. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Cedi, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let me go back to Dr. Nimoy Thompson on the other line for his final words on this matter. So, Doc, Prof ended by saying that the private sector also needs to take responsibility for their own growth, which is also a very valid point, except that some would also say that without the right policies, for instance, our ease of doing business ranking would have stayed at a much higher point. We dropped about 12 places in a year, which means that it is more difficult to do business in Ghana. Doc?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, private sector development takes place within, let's say, concentric circles. So it starts with the individuals who work in the firm. It starts with then the firm itself, how the firm operates, and then the sector in which the firm operates, and of course the national environment, the macroeconomic environment, if you will. So there is enough responsibility for all levels. But the ultimate one, which tends to determine everything, is actually within the hands of government. That's what they always talk about, macroeconomic stability. But within that, the specific interventions also that the government needs to pursue to make it affordable for Ghanaian businesses to function. We recently had the restructuring of the financial sector. Certainly the central bank dealt with issues of incestuous behavior among certain businesses to corporate governance. So that's fine. But there are other reforms that are yet to be carried out to make it worth the promotion of private sector development. One of them is the persistence of predatory lending by Ghanaian financial institutions. And in some countries, they've actually passed laws against predatory lending in order to help businesses and households. So, for example, if you go to a typical bank in Ghana to borrow, there are two ways of calculating your debt servicing burden. One is known as the flat rate. So it's just flat interest rate that stay on 100,000 Ghana cedis. Even as your principal declines to, let's say, 10,000, you are still paying interest for 100,000. And that is bad. Now, there's what we call the declining balance approach, which is considered to be more equitable and fair to the borrower. And that's what the law is. So recently, for example, I recalculated the debt burden for a colleague of mine. And it turns out that if we had used the proper approach, the declining approach, he would have been paying 3,700 Ghana cedis less per month than he's currently, or he was going to pay under the current law. And that would have meant 222,000 Ghana cedis over the term of the loan. This is money that should have gone to the development of his business, but somehow goes to the bank. And this has been happening over and over again. So if we talk about private sector development and responsibility, we also need to create the right environment. The same thing, next, closely allied to that, is the rental regime in Ghana, which also discourages the development of small business. Not too many people can pay 2 years. You go to a country, it's actually 10 years goodwill. So that's one aspect of it. And then there's the issue of markets. Governments need to play an active role in the promotion, especially of international markets. Unfortunately, we are not doing that. Right now, as I speak with you, if you want to know what the poultry industry prospects and so forth are, you never find it on the Ghanaian government website. But guess where you will find it? On the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture's website. Very thorough analysis of the poultry industry in Ghana that's not even available to Ghanaian policymakers. So they are serious, and they pass that information on to potential American investors or exporters. And that's what accounts to what? The exports of these things to our own market. But within our own, in terms of the institutions, they're not functioning. I'll just give you 2 examples. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority. They're supposed to be doing this. Rather, over the past 20 years at least, they've been involved in one scandal after the other. The last one, I remember, before the most recent one relating to management malpractices and all that, where they even fired the CEO. But the previous one, they had to suspend some people. Why? Because the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, rather than identifying markets for Ghanaian businessmen and exporters, were rather involved in what? Visa racketeering. So a typical trade delegation that was supposed to be finding markets abroad was actually filled with visa hustlers who are not even coming back to Ghana. So you look at the non-traditional exports range. It's been around 2 billion and 2.5. I think a couple of years ago, it actually declined to 2.4. And yet, you go to their website, go there now and call the main line. No one will pick it up, unless maybe they are listening now, and they would. The site is actually managed by the Swiss government and the United Nations. So clearly, we're not even serious there. And then you have the Exim Bank that's supposed to be financing exports. I saw an advert the other day, they are into youth in vegetable farming. So we need to realign even the vision. And I always cite the case of South Korea, when Park Chung-hee, the father of modern South Korea, 18 years, every single 6 months, he personally reviewed the export numbers because they were determined to make South Korea an exporting giant. And they succeeded. We have, on the other hand, given these out to state institutions that become avenues for party patronage, irrespective of which government is in power. We put people there who have absolutely no clue what they should do. No one holds them accountable for anything. So we are stuck with that. And then my colleague talked earlier about the trade surplus and other. We must be very careful in translating or at least interpreting those numbers, because most of what we export really, the resource, the earnings don't come back to us. We say we're an oil exporting country, gold, and so forth and so on. The only sure source of foreign exchange is cocoa, regrettably, because the oil money hardly comes back to us. The last time I checked, the share of corporate taxes from oil was less than 1%, 0.7% of tax revenue. The gold money, no, but so it's basically a country that's dependent on cocoa all these years. So we need to pay attention to that. And then lastly, the issue of debt and debt borrowing strategy. Ideally, my brothers, our debt levels are actually quite low if you look at our needs for infrastructure development, for instance. But because of corruption, the debt level, it's almost impossible to finance the debt because, let's say, a project that's intrinsically worth $10 million or 10 million Ghana cedis. We need to have some faith in the city. That's been inflated to 100 million Ghana cedis. That means when you get around to financing that debt, you have to get money from somewhere in the economy because the project itself is incapable of financing. So the quality of our debt stock, and it's not just a Ghanaian problem, it's an African problem. That's why the African debt crisis emerged and it continues. So we need to begin to combat corruption or waste or malfeasance in procurement as a way of building room for borrowing for infrastructure development. Because you cannot finance infrastructure from here. And then lastly, the issue of a debt strategy. There we are now trying to borrow, raise some Eurobonds. Since 2007, when we floated the first Eurobonds, we haven't really had a structured, strategic approach to raising these money. We are just happy to go out and come, it was oversubscribed and so forth and so on. But what is the strategy? Now that we are going to borrow, I don't know what the exact amount, what is the medium-term outlook?
So it's 750 million for now and 3 billion,
Say that again?
750 million for now and 3 billion in all.
Precisely. So, but you need to be able to link your debt, the debt that you incur, to your potential income. In this case, potential growth, which the government is already projecting to decline. Don't forget the government promised us double-digit growth while it was in opposition. It has still not been able to meet the double-digit growth. The highest we did was 8.1 a couple of years ago, but that was largely because of oil. And if you look at the projections, it's now going to go down to 5.7. So the projections are actually not that encouraging. That's one. And then export. As I said, the numbers may look impressive on paper, but to the degree that you don't get all the money and all you get is cocoa, and God knows that we've exploited cocoa farmers enough.
Okay.
They are the second poorest socioeconomic group in Ghana.
Okay.
We are having contradictions. So we really, again, let me emphasize that in order for us to deal with this crisis as it is now, government should handle things that it has immediate control over. And one of such things is spending. That's all.
Right.
And then we can worry on the others later.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nimoy Thompson. So Dr. Nimoy Thompson is the former chairman of the National Development Planning Commission. He ended on a point that we would be... So, Raymond, it seems like Dr. Thompson raised a lot of points that even the ease of doing business ranking has been making.
Yes. So, for example, there are 11 criteria for determining whether we are doing business right. Very good. In the year 2010, we ranked 60. In the year 2017, the first government year, we 120. We improved slightly to 114. But that tells you that even the year before, we were 108. That tells you that the things you ought to do realistically. Now, the higher the number, the worse you are.
Okay, so Raymond, what I'll do is that we'll take these messages and come back. When we come back, we'll look at the details of what we are failing to do in the ease of doing business report. We have chosen to take this route in the Cedi conversation because basically, look, we are not retaining the money we are making in this country. All the money we are spending is flying outside, and we need to have a conversation around how we can attract some of that money to stay here. When we come back, we'll look at how that can be done. Stay with us.
Hey, Kweku, what is this? Can't you see? My fresh new Tier rubber Hyundai with stylish leather seats, steering audio control, Bluetooth to receive all calls whilst cruising. See, I can even park with a rear view mirror camera. Simple. One button, one touch, then vroom. No key. You see how they see the blow? Sweat be what? And all for about 63 Ghana cedis a day. Hey, Charlie, brand new Hyundai. About 63 Ghana cedis. But Kweku, how? Masa, my bank society Ghana. Charlie, all you have to do is to go to the Hyundai showroom. Choose the car you want, and SG Ghana Bank will give 100% of the funds you need to buy it. It's so simple. You get up to 60 stress-free months to pay back, and the interest rate they pay. Hey, SG Ghana Bank. But Kweku, can I test drive it? Sir, test drive. Go get yours, chief test driver. Yes, you too for Tier rubber in your brand new Hyundai. Get full financing for the car of your dreams at the best interest rate on the market today with SG Ghana Bank. Call 0302-214-314 or visit any SG Ghana Bank branch right now. And remember, terms and conditions apply. With SG Ghana Bank, the future is you.
Click, send, download, server down, upload, buzz, buffer, Wi-Fi down, print, ping, call, connection lost, video call, vibrate, transfer, call, share, receive. That's the sound of the pace of business today. Airtel Tigo Business provides you with a full suite of flexible mobile plans, value-added services, and reliable fixed services for the startups, SMEs, and corporate businesses, so you can adapt, develop, expand, and progress. Contact us today at business@airteltigo.com.gh so we can help your business evolve. Airtel Tigo Business, making business simple.
It's a new day. I want you to first think big, not small. Think of how great we can be when we work together. Together, we can ensure that our hard work will provide a better future. Together, we can provide a foundation for you and your business to succeed, regardless of its size. Together, we can create opportunities for all. Bank with us today and let's journey forward together. Forward together. Cowbank, forward together.
Bibiara wa melkom Luciano le melkom Nofiano ye melkom. What are you looking for? Malcolm got it all. Great discount, dodo. Yama feed so. Best bargains on our days. Everything here is a bargain. High quality, goods be our priority. So tell your mom, tell Poppy, tell your actually everybody.
First National Bank presents its 4th edition of the Economic and Business Breakfast, an opportunity for the Ghanaian business community to understand the macroeconomic fundamentals with the practicalities of doing business in Ghana. According to the 8th edition of Where to Invest in Africa report by RMB, the corporate and investment banking arm of First Rand Group, Ghana remains one of the top 10 most attractive investment destinations in Africa. Senior RMB researcher Celeste Falconer will assess each African economy's investment potential with a key focus on Ghana's economic future. Date is Tuesday, 26 March 2019 at 9 a.m. This event is strictly by invitation. Call 0242 435050 or email info@firstnationalbank.com.gh to book a seat. Proudly supported by Joy Business, empowering, prospering together. First National Bank. How can we help you?
Oh my God, today police will use me for light soup.
Driver, why?
My car insurance has expired and the police are up ahead. That is why I'm behaving this way.
This driver, pa. So haven't you heard of Sunu Assurance's Easy Buy? You just have to dial *711 *733 hash to purchase or renew your motor insurance on all mobile money platforms.
So you mean I just dial *711 *733 hash and I'll be sorted? Oh my goodness, this is so easy and convenient.
Yes, dial *711 *733 hash to pay or renew your motor insurance on all the mobile money platforms. You can locate our offices nationwide at Airport Accra, Spintex, Tema, Kumasi, Koforidia, Tamale, Sunyane, Winneba, Cape Coast, Takrade, and Obuasi. You can contact us on 0302 770 548. Sunu Assurances. You pick your way, we take the risk.
Coffee in your cup and Joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM.
Daybreak again.
Whatever your movement is really, that movement contributes to our economy in a very unique way. We've been speaking with Dr. Nimoy Thompson and Professor Eric Osei-Sibe, both economists, both speaking from different sides of the equation, but we've come to the point that we've realized that if we want to see any serious change in the Ghana city conversation, it means that we need to see a serious change in local business development. Our plan was to speak to the Ministry of Business Development and Ministry of Trade and Industry to ask them exactly what is being done to ensure that the next Google is from Ghana. The next company that attracts so much foreign revenue is Ghanaian. In simple terms. Unfortunately, it's been very difficult to reach them. So what we'll do is that we will take the ease of doing business ranking and then we'll look at the individual elements of it and look at what exactly must be done. But before we do that, belated happy birthday to Catechist Samuel Opon Ansong of Bethel Presby Church. This is from Mr. and Mrs. Spencer Forson. And happy birthday to Mrs. Elizabeth J of Kaswa from your grandchildren. Enjoy to the max. Text messages are brought to you by Afrodan. Your back must last you a lifetime. Glyco Critical Illness Plan GSIP. Glyco, we cushion you for life. Afrodan is offering you today the most comfortable chair in the world. Period. The Nightingale Extreme Comfort Chair. With over 10 thoughtfully engineered features, especially customized for health and comfort, working has never had it this good. So go to Afrodan on the first floor of the Swansea Shopping Arcade and feel this chair. You will be amazed. Have you had a loved one suffer as a result of cancer, kidney failure, or heart disease? The emotional and financial stress is very traumatic. The Glyco Critical Illness Plan GSIP has been designed to alleviate some of the financial burdens critical illness poses on loved ones and family. Do not wait until it's too late. Sign on to the Glyco Critical Illness Plan GSIP for financial support when diagnosed with critical illness such as cancer, strokes, kidney failures, and others. Speak to Glyco Life today for your GSIP policy on 020-2222-113 or dial Star Glyco on your Star phone app, available on Android and iOS. Glyco Life, we cushion you for life. Let me begin with you, Achina, before Raymond comes in with the details. Achina.
Okay. So I've been thinking, I mean, if you look at the debate that the president stoked, I mean, quite apart from what we've heard from the commentators who just left us, about the need for us as Ghanaians to develop a taste for indigenous products, the need for us as Ghanaians to be able to produce. There's one man, Dr. Papakwesi Indom. He is a politician and he is also an entrepreneur. When it comes to media, he has a chain of them. When it comes to production, he has a number of companies that are into that.
Right.
He seems to have himself been overwhelmed by what is going on. Just last week, he put out a statement, and in the statement, he said he's asking why. I'll just read portions of Dr. Papakwesi Ndom's statement to capture the mood of how Ghanaian business people are feeling. He is equally
Achina, I'll let you
estranged.
continue, but let me take the Joy Business Minutes now.
Hello, Darrell and Karen here.
Welcome to the Joy Business Minutes.
The IMF board is set to meet and review the country's performance under its program. The review is seen as very important if the country is to exit from the IMF program.
Economist Professor Godfrey Buckman has described the cost of the yet-to-be-issued Eurobond as favorable despite current economic challenges. His comments comes after the government secured far more than the $3 billion targeted in its Eurobond sale.
An insurance consultant, Edgar Redo, is casting doubt on the assertion that recapitalization will lead to improved penetration in the insurance industry. According to him, the Insurance Commission must do thorough work on finances of various players in the sector before talking about recapitalization.
And in the UK, a financial services company has been ordered not to reuse an advert in which it tried to persuade people to take out a loan in case they wanted to stockpile food because of Brexit.
But not everyone found that to be cool.
You can joke about Brexit and get away free.
Exactly a minute past 9 here on the Super Morning Show. Ben Achina Brinty was making a point.
Yeah, so Kwesi Ndom says, this evening I am asking why. Why is it that no Ghanaian bank has crossed the boundary and established in other African countries or the UK, Europe or Asia? He goes on. But banks from Nigeria, South Africa and France, etc. have established in Ghana. He asks again, why is it that we cannot name indigenous Ghanaian private sector companies that have been in business successfully for more than 50 years? He asks why again. Why do we prefer state-owned or foreign-owned Ghanaian? Why do we prefer state-owned or foreign-owned to Ghanaian-owned? We can't allow our neighbors or schoolmates or friends to succeed. I will also proceed. Why is it that when a Ghanaian company faces challenges, the answer is to close it, make noise, and disgrace the owners? Aren't challenges meant to be solved? He added a number of other questions.
Ben.
But this is coming from Kwesi Ndom.
Ben, very interesting points that you bring in now. I have Kofi Bentil on the line. Maybe we can peruse those issues a bit further. Mr. Bentil, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Bentil, in the first place, the two economists that we spoke to earlier seem to have an idea that this is formed by, this Cedi conversation is informed by the fact that we don't have strong Ghanaian businesses who can retain local currency?
That is one of the ideas that we have had over the years, talking through this issue for many years now. And there is merit to it. The other side of that idea is that we tend to look at only one side of that whole argument of foreign companies repatriating. If you take, for instance, telcos only, I remember very clearly that until Vodafone took over Ghana Telecom, this government, that's Ghana government, was putting millions of dollars into Vodafone over decades. Now, some of us were arguing that that money was being wasted because no profit was coming out of it, until finally we sold it. Now, since that happened, Vodafone has invested millions of dollars in the telco system, but they're also taking out money. If you take that argument alone, what I'll say is that we are not taking account of the fact that these foreign companies are also investing millions into the country. They are employing millions, and they've created thousands of collateral businesses related to them. All the people selling cards on the street, etc., they have a collateral economic benefit. The point I want to make is this. We, for instance, in the policy view, we don't see, or we don't want to put ourselves as experts, but we have the benefit of listening to many experts, and this is what we've found. Each of them has a nuance, a different idea, and then the main idea. One of the things we've agreed on is that there are systemic, long-term, fundamental problems with the city, and then there are ad hoc, short-term shocks that affect the city. We don't know exactly what they are. What we need is not a new political forum like we did in Senchi. Those political forums assume that we know the problem. And so we sit down now and figure out what to do. We did Senchi, and we didn't know exactly what the problems were. We came back, nothing has happened. We can't have another political forum. What we are calling for, from Imani and analyst communities, what we need is an expert consensus on what is affecting our city. Let's put the economists in the room. The experts in this area in the room. We can sit back and watch them. But we need them to come through all these ideas and agree on what the real factors are. Fortunately, economics is mathematics. You can actually calculate these things, put them together, and even test them out. We can give ourselves 2-3 years to do this, okay? Forgetting about the politics a bit, and say, okay, if we think it's this, let's test it out and see. It is crucial that we understand this phenomenon. And if we do, and we now know if we touch here and touch here and touch here, this is what will happen. Then we can go ahead and have the political, forum to decide how we are going to tackle the problem. Our position and the history bears us out. Since Kwame Nkrumah took us out of the West African economic system, the colonial one, the city has been depreciating. It's been over 60 years now. So we need an expert consensus on why this is happening. I can go on and talk about the production and other things that Achina was talking about. A lot of it is true, but the thing is, we've been tinkering around these things. Not all of it is true. So we need that expert consensus. Then we can begin to solve the problem. Understanding the problem is half the solution.
Now, Mr. Benson, on the earlier points that you made about how much companies invest, and this is for no particular company, but how much companies invest vis-a-vis how much they repatriate. Some work has actually been done on this on a continental scale, and I'm reading from a Guardian article where research released by a group of UK and Africa-based NGOs suggests that Sub-Saharan Africa receives $134 billion each year in loans, foreign investments, and development aid. So foreign investment is a big part of this. And $192 billion leaves the region, leaving a $58 billion shortfall. And even this $192 billion is simply illicit financial flows. It doesn't even take into account of the unrequited outflows of money that goes out legally. So again, this is something that has been documented and is there. So can't we start looking at this?
Oh, we can start looking at it, and we are aware of some of those statistics. In fact, that is why we have been opposed to aid for a long time, for many years, and now the story is coming out that indeed aid has not helped us. But that is also part of the story. For instance, there's another story that says that Africa is the recipient of illicit financial inflows, that a lot of money laundering happens, people bring drug money and all that, those kinds of things. If people are bringing drug money in the millions and illicit financial inflows in the millions, that should actually be helping our economies. Okay, so there's something missing in that area. So the truth of that does not mean that is the whole truth. And there are so many other things. Again, I talk about the collateral economic benefit and what it generates. The guy selling the cards on the streets, for instance, somebody may not be counting that this is the job somebody does to pay their school fees and etc. I'm simply saying something. We have a lot of different kinds of information and different factors and different things that seem to have an effect. Any economist you listen to is making sense about this thing or the other thing, okay? But what we have not done, like other people have done, is to put a clear finger on the factors and say this is the number 1 factor, this is the number 2 factor, number 3 factor, number 4 factor. My view is that if we cannot do it, then we should not do it. But we can do it. And until we have done that, we are beating around the bush and going around, and it is causing real problems to ordinary people. So we who call ourselves intellectuals and whoever and whatever should get ourselves into a room and put a pin in this thing and say we know what affects the city. Here is the ranking of factors. Then we can move on to tell the politicians this is where the problem is. Now fix it. If the politicians are having a problem fixing it, all of us will say they're going to jump on them. Then we can have a forum and say, okay, even if it's going to cost you politically, we are going to have to do this. So that expert consensus, I think, is crucial. For now, every economist you listen to will have a different view.
But didn't we have a similar consensus at Senchi and then go ahead to vote governments into power to bring some sort of resolution to some of these issues?
And that's why I mentioned Senchi in the beginning of my submission, that we did this at Senchi. And the problem with Senchi was that we thought we knew the problem and we're going to find a solution. We went to Senchi, beat about the issues, and found out that we didn't really have a clear definition of the problem. That is why Senchi yielded nothing. So I was saying that if we go for another Senchi, we'll be missing it, because we really think we know the problem. But every economist has a different view or some aspect to it. So another Senchi will not be useful. That is why Senchi was not useful. We need to do, instead of political consensus, expert consensus. Put different people with different minds, but at least they all must be experts, in a room and let them bring out all the factors. Fortunately, this is mathematical. Economics is mathematical. It's not just one of the social sciences that takes a lot of, I think, and opinions. We can calculate some of these things. And over some time, even if it takes more than a year, let them conclude what the actual factors are. Look, if you go to places where things are developed, they know today how many jobs they generated in their economy. They know exactly where inflation is. They know exactly what is pushing what. And it takes effort to do these things, and we must start. So I think we should tone down on the political talk and the, plenty commentary on the issue and get experts into a room. If even it means government has to sponsor it, we need to understand this phenomenon. Then we can start solving it.
Thank you very much, Kofi Bensel, for joining us.
Yeah.
Kofi Bensel is Vice President of Imani Africa. He's also a governance expert and a lawyer. I'm still in the studio with Ben Achena Brentio, Raymond Akwa is here, Nimo Enimado is here. You are also here. So very soon I'll be opening the phone lines for you to tell us what you think. 0302-216-541. Achena, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up on the points you're trying to make, and then I'll move to Raymond.
Exactly. Kofi, so that was what Papa Kosi Ndum characterized the problem we are facing. And I think one of the ironies of what is happening, I wanted to point out, I think Kofi Bensel went into it, that even as we advocate for indigenous businesses or businesses that will ensure that we keep our resources in the country to stabilize our city, we should be minded that the existing system is employing Ghanaians. Whether the businesses are owned by foreigners, it's still Ghanaian who are being employed. Another irony is the fact that the people who are mostly affected by the cedi depreciation, I'm sure it affects all of us one way or the other, but the people who are mostly affected by it should be the importers. It's because they have to convert a lot of cedis to get the dollars to import. But it is also their action which is leading to the cedi depreciation, because we are talking about so much importation, and this importation are being made by importers. But when the cedi is actually on the decline, it is the importers who are going to suffer, because they need to convert a lot of cedis to get those dollars.
Interesting paradox you raised there, but of course we have found this morning that Raymond, it's a bit more nuanced than exports versus imports, right?
Yes, and we have actually gone beyond that to also suggest that. And again, I am in full support of a huge chunk of what Mr. Bento said, except to say that I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel in Cedi depreciation. I think that as we speak, those are the central bank. They know why this is happening. I also know deep within my heart that the people in the government will tell you the reasons why this has happened. Again, because some people are not within government, they can tell you generally, and that's what I think the people did proud to his coming on board with his views. I am expecting action. The claim that we don't know, so we have to find out the reasons before we get solutions, I do not support that. Okay, so what would have been the reason for those who made the promise that I'll fix this problem, fix that problem?
Yeah.
What would have been the basis for making the claim that
Exactly.
this is what happened and that's why we are getting where we are getting today? Now, we were talking about how...
Maybe political?
Well, maybe, but you have to live up to it. That's why you are being held to account today. We were talking about ease of doing business ranking, and I was very much talking about why in the last 10 years, it was 2017's on 120. That's the worst in the last 10 years. Our best grade has been 60. That was in 2010. The 2017 one, that's 120, was actually the worst one. We sought to improve it in 2018 by bringing it down from the 120 to 114. Now, and again, every businessman is interested in the areas that we are talking about. Every businessman is worried about these areas because one is dealing with construction permits, starting business, getting electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting, and credits like, loans and other things to push your business, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, resolving insolvency, and labor market regulation. These are the things. Yes, these are the things that when you fix, you see an improvement in your own, what they call it, doing business ranking.
Which is not just about a ranking, but it also means that people, first of all, are more attracted to come and do business. It also means that people generally find it easier to make money in the country. So it should be easier to build, to register your business.
Yes.
Basic things.
Easier to get electricity. Easier for you to resolve your problems. If, for example, do you know that when we said that we're going to put on the Register General's website, a very small process when you go through it and get it, and you get your tax identification number through that process, we finally came to decouple it and said, no, we could not do that again because you have to go and find your tax identification number from GRA or any of these affiliate bodies and then bring that tax identification number straight to the GRA for you to do straight to the Register General's office for you to now do the registration. How difficult do you want people to go through this process? How do we want people who are in this country seeking to sue people for resolving business problems? It will take you forever. A year, 2 years, and more than that.
And by the
all
way,
of
what
these
has become of this thing, the addressing system.
Yes, and we promised people that we were going to resolve these issues by bringing in the GPS and Ghana Post GPS and all of those things. I think that it is when we live up to these expectations that our ranking on the ease of doing business will show that we are serious about making sure that we build our businesses. The mere talk, the positioning that, we need to converse more on the matter, please. The executive of this republic have identified the problems. We all have discussed the problems. They seem to be fullest on top of the problems. What is lacking is the evidence to show that we have fixed the problem.
Yeah, Raymond, given all the factors you mentioned about getting utilities, getting businesses registered, getting the necessary loans and all of that for businesses to be established, granted all these things were in place and you are able to establish your business. So somebody builds a business to the level of, for example, GN Bank, and the government comes with one policy, a certain minimum capital, and that brings all of this business to the ground one day.
Okay.
What becomes of it? And I think that is what people like Papa Kwesindum is talking about. They seem to have a certain mindset that there's a deliberate effort to collapse what belongs to Ghanaian, and that's a serious issue we need to look at.
Very
Do we deliberately want to collapse businesses owned by Ghanaians?
Who is deliberately?
Well, that's out there.
Raymond, I'll let you make this point, but I need to open the phone line. 0302 216 541 0244 340 437 0244 340 437 0302 216 541. The conversation is getting even more heated, but let me take just a 5 minutes break. I'll be back and then I'll open the phone lines.
At Afrodan, we believe that many of the problems people have with their health is as a result of the way they sit. In other words, your chair can kill you. Here's Dr. Marcus Mann of the Chiropractic and Wellness Center.
What you have to remember is that the spine is the lifeline to your body, and posture is the window to that spine. Now, posture is affected by your daily activities and habits like sitting. That's why at the Chiropractic and Wellness Centers, we recommend what I believe to be the best chairs available for preventing not only subluxations, but also other health problems that you may not be aware of. And that's Rabami and Mobilex chairs. Unfortunately, on a daily basis, I have to correct the effects of this poor sitting habit in our businessmen and businesswomen. Always remember, optimum spine equals optimum health.
So, for the sake of your health, buy Rabami or Mobilex chairs from Afrodan. We're on the first floor of the Swansea Shopping Arcade. Telephone 663-085.
Hey, Kwame, what's up here? My brother, my wife has been diagnosed with cancer. What? My brother is here with kidney disease too. Oh, yeah.
Do you know the World Health Organization estimates that over 16,000 new cases of cancers are diagnosed annually in Ghana, and kidney diseases account for 10% of all medical admissions to Kolebu?
But thanks to Glyco-Critical Illness Plan, GSIP, I have spent over 20,000 Ghana cedis on my younger brother's disease. Yeah. What is GSIP?
Glyco-Critical Illness Plan, GSIP, provides you with financial support when diagnosed with any critical illness or dread disease such as cancers, strokes, kidney failures. Speak to GlycoLife today on 0302-218-500 for your GSIP policy. It is definitely in our interest to survive. GlycoLife, we cushion you for life.
In this part of the world, we rise early, way before the sunrise. We plan, we pray, we prep, just so we are a step ahead. We keep the conversations going to stay connected to family, friends, and business. They say, Agrobeswa, Ifrianopa, start your day bright with MTN Kokroko. For only 1 Ghana cedi, you can enjoy 400 megabytes of data and 30 minutes of free MTN to MTN calls every day from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. everywhere you go. Dial *138# to buy MTN Kokroko bundle now.
I am Dr. Acacia. Acacia gives your workers the best customer service and treatment options when the need arises, keeping them healthier and more productive for your business. Acacia Health Insurance. We place value on those you value.
Hello, Corporate Ghana. It's the 4th Ghana CEO Summit, a unique 2-day world-class business conference to be held on the 20th and 21st of May, 2019 at Kempinski. Theme: Futuristic Economy, Technology-Driven Future of Business and Governance for Economic Transformation. This summit has been a real success and has attracted over 1,500 dignitaries, including His Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo. For registration and sponsorship, visit GhanaCEOSummit.com or call 054-639-1970. Powered by CEO Network Ghana and Deloitte.
Now, this very moment, it's the pulse of possibility, potential, power. It's time
to make your move.
To take that step.
The time
is now.
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 The great things you do tomorrow start with the small steps you take right now. So take that step with Old Mutual. Call us on 0302-230-638 and make now count. Old Mutual. Do great things every day.
Since inception, almost 100% of Ashesi University students have found jobs, started businesses, or gone on to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. From Accra to Nairobi, London to New York, Ashesi graduates are noticed and they are leading successful careers. If you dream of a rewarding life and career, an Ashesi education prepares you for just that. Learn more about applying to Ashesi at www.ashesi.edu.gh. Remember, admission is ongoing.
Providence Insurance, insurance for marine. Providence Insurance, insurance for your motor. Providence Insurance, insurance for your property. Providence Insurance, your future happy days.
With Provident, man, you are covered.
Super Morning Show.
Yuma, sorry, Adiachi. Daybreak again.
So it's 22 minutes past 9. Call us on 0302 216 541 0244 340 437. What do you make of the president's solution to the Cedi depreciation?